Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Badly Written Doge Book, the audiobook director's cut. Nick and Gahan convinced me to make this after I got bored of trying to convince them to read the damn thing themselves because they're fucking lazy bastards. Now, anyway, I suppose let's get straight into it. The way I'll be handling this is. Oh, you start screen, fuck off. I'll be just reading it as one would expect of an audiobook, and just adding my own interruptions. And this is planned for each episode to be about an hour long, I suppose. Anyway, let's get straight to it. Doge, the New Great War. And here's some nice handy little cover art we made specifically for this, because everything in this book is actually custom made. Because I have too much time on my hands, and I don't have money to pay other people to do this shit. Anyway, there's your credit. There's your disclaimer. Several disclaimers. And here's your first piece of nice fancy concept art. Ooh. And your first sort of chapter. I mean, I can't really call these chapters because it's sort of just like wide areas of things. But generally, when you see one of these nice splash screens with the title page and the concept art, that usually means there's some plot point thing happening somewhere. So, Imperial Guardsmen formed the main striking force of the White Empire. They are armed with deadly AG-43 battle rifles, which is conveniently partially clipped out of shot here. Nice. But yeah, I'm still quite happy with this one. One of my later paper drawings. I don't really do work on paper anymore, but regardless. Part 1. Vladimirovich Palace, Shiberkonivov Station, to 2nd November 92. 40 minutes after midnight. Cheering crowds filled the halls and tunnels of Kornilov Station. Cameras panned and drifted, servo motors jauntily whirring away as they took in the scene. Another great anniversary for the Empire. But a small one for now, though. Just Kornilov and a handful of outposts. That will have changed soon. A column of the Izmailovsky regiment marched past the viewing platform, Aryan symphonies blaring from speakers. The clinking of glasses could be heard around the royal booth, princes and dukes exchanging shots with the generals and admirals. The Tsar Romlemnov stood facing the crowds, preparing to give his address. The passing columns each turned salute as they passed, boots crunching on the brick underfoot. And so it was that the Tsar climbed onto the podium and began his speech. Greetings, loyal subjects. As we all know, today is a day of great joy for the Empire, for the monarchy, and for the people. Insert cheering noises I don't know how to fucking make. It is, therefore, my greatest honor to present to you. Insert trailing speech effect that I can't be asked editing this to add. As you can see, this is a very high effort production. Anyway, so the gist of what you. So I think I did a decent job with this part. It's sort of mysterious. It doesn't give away too much, but it gives away just enough to draw you in. And of course, historical context, because you don't just make a fucking alt history sci-fi thing without giving historical context in the director's cut, So yes, so Space Station. This is actually of course, this whole thing is set in the weird Doge universe. But this is named after the historical Lavar Kornilov, who was, I think I pronounced that right, I hope I pronounced that right, holy shit, who was a white Russian person. Leader, I suppose. Anyway. Also here, we have Izmailovsky Regiment, which is, of course, a bad rebranding of the historical Izmailovsky Regiment, one of the Imperial Lifeguard detachments, which conveniently was actually resurrected after the fall of the Soviet Union by Putin. For all that, whatever that works for. Now, fun fact: all this stuff was written 2 years ago originally, and rewritten a couple months ago, because I just went through this whole thing and rewrote basically every single piece of text in this shit-ass book because, well, shit. What do you expect, right? It's doge writing. Anyway, so perspective shift. That's what this stuff's for. So you always got so from this part on, you're always gonna have your perspective, your whatchamacallit, your locations, your date, and your time, and then from there you have words. Lemskovich, Admiral's Office, Imperial Space Fleet, GHQ, Kornilov Station, 2nd November, 92, 49 minutes past midnight. The noise from the television blurred into the background. Lemskovich looked down at his desk. On it sat a handwritten note from the Tsar himself. Admiral Lemskovich, you do now commence with the invasion of the accursed Red State. Our proxies in Cade have already been contacted. You are to supervise all space-related endeavors. I trust you will maintain utmost secrecy regarding the contents of this message, and you will not fail in your task. The ghost of work which helps us all. So, of course, no, contrary to popular belief, I did not even know fucking Warhammer existed when I did the world building for this stuff. It's sort of just like, okay, I need a bunch of cat puns. Where the fuck do I get cat puns? Yeah, sure, that works. And so I sort of just made this thing up completely independently. And I had to change the way the characters for this faction were referred to, because some guy just like pointed out, hey yo, you know stuff like in Warhammer right now. Oh fuck, I don't want to get sued, right? So yeah, that's the story behind that. Anyway, and of course your obligatory historical context goes to Borkovich. So this is sort of a historical, but not really. So but you know the context for this is that in the setting, Borkovich would be an imperial general, well, a white general actually, who, upon the great escape from the home planet, sacrificed themselves and their army to hold off the Bolshevik dogs from reaching the Imperial escape rocket ship. Now I know, guys, is Doge on crack? No, this is the actual setting for this. This is a fucking Doge meme with Doge puns, built around the Russian Civil War, with sci-fi, with fucking space cats. Don't question it. Why the hell are you watching this if you're questioning it so much? Anyway, the contents were unsurprising. It was typical that the Tsar would convey these sorts of orders on significant days to the Empire. The Soviet Union, the now superpower that had forced the White forces out of their homeland so many centuries ago, would now face its own medicine, and Lemskovich was to give the first dose. He pulled the transmitter out of a pocket to signal all forces, Doges and cadres alike. Lemskovich to all personnel. The Tsar has ordered us to begin the invasion. Right, and here we go, another perspective shift. This is going to be our first shift with character. Are you guys excited? No? Yep, that's about what I expect. Barkov, Doge's one extraplanetary outpost, RD-52. 3rd November of the year 92. 3:50 a.m. Barkov awoke to the blaring of the station's alarms. The ship's outpost was in chaos. He heard drums in the distance. No, not drums. Shooting. He shook himself awake as he climbed out of the cot, ears pivoting frantically as they tried to determine the nature of the noise. He thought that someone was visiting the shooting range now. It wouldn't be nearly as loud even if they did, which left only one option. Attention, comrades! We are being attacked. Report to your duty stations immediately. Not one step back! Holy fuck, that was a shit Russian accent. But I can't do this shit, man. Nick, why the fuck did you tell me to read an audiobook? Anyway, he grabbed a service weapon from the drawer underneath his bunk. The other weapons were gone, presumably having already been taken. Doge, get your shit together. The ADSH-21 shotgun he had been issued was a somewhat outdated weapon, but whichever officer had been in charge of procurement clearly didn't think the station would be attacked, though neither would he, should he have been issued that position. Still, debates on the necessity of arming a far-flung outpost could come later. There were bigger issues at hand. Barkov rushed into the glow of the red battle lights, throwing on his plates and webbing as he rushed towards the ever louder sound of gunfire. He emerged in one of the aeroponics labs, finding two other guards taking cover behind an overturned planter. Moving towards them, he fired two shots into the throng of caddies beginning to pour into the room, their weak armor proving little resistance to the buckshot. He ducked as a burst of cattle fire poured into the planter they were using as cover. Returning in kind, he managed to kill another three cattos. They seemed to feel no pain, soldiering through any non-fatal hit. A lucky shot whizzed by, turning nearby MK's head into cloud red mist with a wet thwack. They had no choice. They had to get back. The aeroponics labs were lost. They could only watch hopelessly as the airtight door closed on the wave of caddos behind them, bullets already stitching through its armored frame. His radio chirped. Govora Dochkova! All remaining units pull back to the command module. The station is lost. We must hold out until we can launch the escape pods. Barkov kept running. The captain was right. There was no hope staying here, not unless they wanted cattle bullets through their heads. Back to the common areas, and further into the depths of the base as the enemy closed in. Govora Chibkov! Captain Doshkova is dead. Repeat, the captain is dead. The line has been breached. We are pinned. Requesting immediate support and calling for evac. He didn't get to finish the message. Barkov set his radio to transmit. This is Barkov. The station is lost. Anyone alive board the shuttles. Then he turned, playing a distress message on the loop. With any luck, the enemy would take some time to figure out how to disable the station's communications relays, hopefully giving the message time to get back to command in Blemsk. Barkov ran towards the close spot dock, climbing into the great shuttle and hitting the launch button. Anyone left would have to find their own way out. They looked at anyone alive was already in the shuttle. The cadets weren't far behind, peppering the door with gunfire. Ping! 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 The rounds that bounced up the escape pods aren't pressure hull. It seemed they had gotten away, the caps speeding away from the Doom station, but the luck didn't hold out. Almost. Ping! A cannon bullet severed one of the main oxygen lines. Craft's occupants watched with mounting horror as half their oxygen escaped into space. Needles on the pressure gauges slowly retreating until they hit rock bottom. So yay, first combat scene. I'm fairly happy with that one. Not too many comments. I mean, it could be better. It definitely could be better. But, it's not the worst thing in the world. Anyway, time to move on to our Kaido character. And, there's a shit ton of different names here. I've gotten complaints about that before. But, it's just a bunch of names. Just fucking memorize them. Or stop complaining. I'm not fucking changing it. I want my fucking diverse cast of characters, god damn it. Anyway, kiddings. Doge is fun. Extra planetary outpost. RD-52. 5:13 a.m. The station is clear. By the grace of Meow. Kiddings relax somewhat in the suit. Pneumatics hissing as they fed the pressure. The station's defenders had fought surprisingly hard for what intelligence said was a mere refueling station. Still, his forces had performed admirably. Only a number having had to die in sacrifice to Meow. A sharply dressed Doge walked into the room, breath clattering against the doorway as he entered. Getting stern, almost drawing his weapon, thinking it was some strange, hybrid holdout. But no, it was just their Imperial liaison officer, oversized hat and all. You must be Priest Gittings. He nodded slightly, armored visor retracting into his suit with a faint dunk. Excellent. Now, where would I find the base commandant's office? He gestured towards the center of the base, watching as the Doge made an about face and walked off, steps clacking on the tiled floors. Thought he could hear the slamming of drawers and the distant rustling of papers. These Imperials were an odd bunch. Regardless, he would have to learn to deal with this lunacy. After all, it was never wise to question Meow himself. So, there's a bunch of sub-lore here. So, effectively, the Kaido factions are being controlled by the Imperial faction because of a bunch of shenanigans. Basically, there's 3 Kaido sub-factions. I was going to open the lore document, but I realized the lore document is shit and needs to be rewritten anyway. So there's 3 Kaido sub-factions, and together they form the Kaido Confederacy. And what's happened here is that one of them is a theocracy who is centered around a cult, around a supercomputer, which so happens to be part of a crashed Imperial spaceship that they lost at some point. Now, the Empire has recently been able to figure this out and have retaken control of the supercomputer, which conveniently lets them control effectively the largest cattle faction, though not the most advanced. Now, that would be Morale, which is conveniently the faction that our character right now, Kiddings, belongs to. Now we have two other factions, which are going to be Purr and Cade. So we'll go with Cade first. Cade is the most technologically advanced faction and split off from Purr after a bunch of shenanigans happened, including a civil war and stuff. And effectively, they are the most advanced cattle faction because they effectively just recruited all of the scientists of Purr and formed their own sort of semi-technocracy. Of course, according to imperial sources, it is in fact just a dictatorship. But of course, that's not what the Cadians would like you'd believe. Cadians, Cadites. I don't even remember what the fuck the plural name for them is, so that's fun. And of course, you have Purr, which sort of just like it's sort of like a monarchy, sort of. They just buy tech off the Cadites. That's about it. Anyway, on to our next character, which is going to be Lemkutin, who is I accidentally tapped into the browser, which is nice. Yeah, Lemkutin is going to be another one of our Shibit POV characters. We have quite a lot of those. Anyway, Lemkutin. She visits the command bunker, Mlemsk. 6:10 a.m. Govorot Shipkov. Captain Doskova is dead. Repeat, the captain is dead. We are pinned. Requesting immediate support and calling for evacuation. The message looped inside Lemkutin's head is like some frenzied tape recorder. The base. Daybase, what the fuck is wrong with you, Doge? Spell check your fucking shit. Damn you, past Doge. Why are you so bad at this? The base had received the message nearly an hour ago, having bouncing. God fucking damn it, Doge. Spell check your shit. Stop being so bad at this. You are supposed to be good, half decent at fucking English. This is exactly why you rewrote the fucking book. Having bounced off a number of satellites. Something had clearly gone horribly wrong in the station, considering the shouting and gunfire which followed. He thumbed over the collection of security tapes, picking out the second last in the stack, pushed it slowly into the player, watching an empty hallway and fast forward. Bizarre. There seemed to be nothing here at all. Doge, did you fucking spell bizarre wrong? Doge, I swear you fucking spelled bizarre wrong, didn't you? Anyway. Oh, wait, what was that? Hit the pause button. Darn, missed it. Back frame, another frame, back. There, a single frame of darkness. He pulled the cassette out of the machine, popping the aluminum frame open with a single tap of glow on the reels, only a speck of residue peeking out from under a part of the film. Sabotage. The job was good, just a minor, seemingly inconsequential slip-up, but that was all it took. He pondered the reality he now had to face. That there was only one other Doge with access to these tapes in the facility, and without any recent visit by command, they'd left only one option. Shibrovich. His second-in-command stepped silently into the room. He had been behaving rather strangely. Gait ever so slightly off, movements ever so slightly too stiff. He was just about to ask if the other Doge knew anything about the recording when they pulled out the pistol, pointing it at Lemkutin. Doge, fucking read the fucking book properly. You wrote this shit. You're supposed to be able to fucking read it. Ah! Pain. Quick on the draw. Lemkutin pulled out his own sidearm, the nickel-plated automatic, glistening in the dim red light. So it was. They had a standoff. The traitor would fire if he fired, and the traitor wouldn't fire. No. An agent right in the beating heart of Shibit Command was far too important an asset to throw away like that. But he had to act fast. One of them was going to lose the nerve eventually, and he was determined not to be the one to do it. He stole a glance at his magazine, the dull brass showing through clear grip panels. 20 rounds. His eyes switched to Shibrovich. No body armor of any kind, though considering he didn't have any either, it didn't inspire much confidence. And so they stood there, a Mexican standoff, nervously eyeing each other under the faint glow of the lights. And so it seemed they would stand there forever, at least until one of them dropped dead from exhaustion. Steps clacked down the hallway, a guard walking by. They burst into the room, Robin raised, trying to figure out the bizarre situation unfolding behind them. At least you fucking spelled it right this time, Doge. And why the fuck did you use it twice in a row? Doge, fix your fucking shit. Get your shit together. You're supposed to be good at this whole writing thing. At least better than drawing. Shibovich turned, killing the guard in 2 shots. But this was all the opening Mlemkutin needed. He pulled the trigger, executing the traitor in a decidedly less refined manner. The barrage of 7.62mm bullets tearing ragged holes in the other Doge. His slide locked open, the weapon pouring smoke. He timed the mag release, the empty magazine clattering to the ground before he turned to look at the corpse. He hadn't yet had the time to think about what had just happened before a muffled explosion blew the corpse to pieces, leaving Mlemkutin with the gory aftermath. Presumably some sort of dead man switch, no way to identify anything now. His radio chirped, and the other guards was calling. Sir, we found Major Shibirovich dead in the closet. Understood. I will sort this out. And get me a janitor. That settled it. There was most certainly a war going on, and the unknown enemy had already infiltrated the heart of Shibit Command. So, that was nice, and besides from Doge being bad and making fucking spelling errors like he always fucking does, Doge, stop being incompetent. Yeah, I'd say that was reasonably well written. Anyway. Shabransky, Ministry of War, Borkovich Building, Golivov Station. 6:31 a.m. Sir, our spy on Shibit Space Command is dead. We just got the signal from their dead man switch. This news was regrettable. The war had been going rather well so far, with several Shibit outposts having been seized successfully. The loss of one of the Empire's most valuable intelligence assets somewhat soured these victories. Fortunately, the officer dispatched to survey one of the captured stations had found an information gold mine, an intact Shibit navigation computer. The explosive charges which had been hastily attached to it had failed to detonate, leaving them with an information gold mine, at least until the Reds noticed the error and disconnected it from the network, whenever that would be. He was made aware of a message from Purin, the official, who they had found in command of the Lokata war effort. In reality, they were an autocrat, sharing the rule with their twin or brother, or whatever it was. They framed themselves as technocrats. Shabransky doubted this was true in any way. Any but the most superficial ways. Still, Kato politics were a strange beast, even to those whose job it was to decipher them. Returning to the matter at hand, he checked the message. Kato forces were in position. The invasion could now commence. And welcome to the premiere. Unnamed Shibit character with mysteriousness. Ooh, fucking spicy literary cliches here. Fun. Premier's office, the Mlim Square. And insert more badly executed Doge puns into historical places. And boom, you have basically the entirety of this fucking book. Why did I decide to write this again? This is 73 fucking pages long. 7:11 a.m. An aide shuffled nervously into the room, sliding a report onto the polished wooden desk. The Premier quickly flipped through the folder. Taxes, spending reports, industrial production, estimates, enemy landings, agricultural production, census reports. Wait, landings? Leningrad, Northern Siberia, Vladivostok. The enemy had come down everywhere. The veteran 11th and 16th divisions in Leningrad and the guards units around Vladivostok would likely be able to fend off any probing attacks for now. But much more worrying was Northern Siberia. He turned, looking to the computer console built in the left wing of the sprawling desk. It was just as he thought. The only units in the area were the green 99th motor rifles, not at full strength and expected to take heavy casualties if attacked by enemy forces of any doubt. But containment of enemy forces was critical. Unopposed, they would easily cut their way all the way to the south, cleaving the entire Union in half. He gave orders dispatching reinforcements to relieve the beleaguered 99th. It was all he could do for now. After all, he couldn't quite bend space-time to his will, just yet, as much as he wanted to. There was, however, one last thing he could do. He lifted the receiver's protective cover, paws leaving imprints in the dust. The soft classical music playing in the background seemed to turn deafening as the phone rang. 1, 2, 3. Comrade Premier. Da, you are needed. And whoopity-whoop, more concept art. What? What's it? Yay! The invasion begins. Though never advancing beyond prototypes, the experimental DT-466 heavy tank was used in the defense of Leningrad. Srebrenicki, shiplet battleship, Slavny Doz, geosynchronous orbit, 8:17 a.m. Enemy attack, enemy attack, enemy sighting. It all seemed to blend together before him, the lines of notifications and alarms on the screen before him blurring into one colossal mess. It was his fault, really. He was in charge of defending the Union against its spaceborne enemies, and he had failed in this duty. They'd gone soft, really. Years, even decades of peace, ever whittling away at the fleet's readiness. He had failed, and he had to pay the price for it. What can one more hurt, he thought, as he filled the glass, the clear alcohol swirling and bubbling before it settled. Really, what can it hurt? Just one to calm the nerves. And with that, the shot was gone. Orders from Stavka had come down. Along with the battlecruiser Alexander Shibsky, they were to provide fire support for the ground forces below, as well as destroy any reinforcements the enemy was receiving before they landed. 2 ships, that was all he had. All he had to hold back the great Caddo invasion fleet. Not favorable odds by any means. His radio chirped. Brock's enough. Good keeping his head down, that's all he was. Just keep sucking up and climbing the great ladder until we go to the very top. Distinctions? Top of the class in causing and handling government bureaucracy. Perhaps competent command, a victory of 19 war games. No real combat record to speak of, though we suppose none of them did. The last big wars had ended some 70 years ago, after all. And I don't remember exactly why this fucking extended rant is just in here. It just is. Anyway. Bah, the enemy was all ceremonial anyway. Spick and span, something good for the parades. The fleet was where anyone wanting something beyond the life of polishing boots and cleaning rifles went, to defend Rodina from the enemy at the gates. He sighed. These days it was more like the space rocks at the gates. The biggest outing they had in recent memory was salvaging the wreck of a freighter hit by an asteroid. The radio chirped again. What was it that we was doing first? Ah, right, Borksinov. Comrade Marshal Srebrenicki, where is our fire support? Over and over again, like those army fools didn't know that it took time to change the orbit of a battleship. At least the massive coordinates they gave were actually in range of any of his ships this time. He sent the orders through to the Shibsky, the battlecruiser smaller but more numerous guns, much better for infantry support. Now, what did that leave him for the ever so important task of securing the borders against further cattle landings? Only the Slavny Doge and the Shibvetsky Soyuz, or at least that's what he would have had if only the Soyuz hadn't been dispatched. They hunt for survivors around the ruins of RD-52, and all of this because some genius bureaucrat decided it would be ever so slightly cheaper to send every cruiser in the fleet for repair at once. At least he had most of the Revolutia class battlecruisers at hand, even if the only one he really had to command was the Shibsky, with all others needing to escape the lunar orbits before they could join the fight. In the distance he saw the atmosphere light up, laser fire from the Shibsky already finding its mark in the enemy. He had only been a child when the last war happened, remembered listening on the radio, waiting for news in the war. News that eventually came, of course, though not exactly of the good sort. His father died on the Fedorov when it went down over Gabelandia, the cruiser shot down by a gaggle of Gabelandian spacecraft. All because the space marshal of the day thought it would be fit to send a single ship out into enemy territory. But the Soyuz would be fine. After all, it was not until fairly recent top-of-the-line battleship, and the Caddo fleet was undoubtedly more primitive. And of course, there was no way the Caddo fleet had enough assets to not only police an entire area of space, but also to assemble in sufficient concentration to destroy a battleship. Then again, these same Caddos had managed to sneak a landing force into Shibvit space without detection. Now, he was not so sure. So, yeah, I guess the character has, like, okay writing. I mean, it's not like god tier writing. No, I can never get god tier writing. I'm bad at character design, guys. What do you expect from me? But yeah, slightly alcoholic, slightly dismissive of the Red Army, and with a shit ton of foreshadowing. The perfect formula. Anyway, Burn. Another Caddo character. Imperial Space Cruiser Tsarevich, somewhere in space. 11:03 a.m. Fern walked into the conference hall, nearly silent on the softly carpeted decks underfoot. She was met with the gaze of several Caddo and Imperial commanders, staring impassively as she took her seat at the carved wooden table. Ah, Commander Purn, I see you have finally arrived. I hear quite a few things about you. Yes, I'm sure my reputation precedes me, Admiral Nemskovich. Now, let's get to business. We didn't come all the way out here for nothing. And so the discussions began. Both fleets moored next to each other, the sheer congregation of firepower to discourage any sorts of foul play. A display mounted on the wall switched between several different views of the combined fleets, showing both her flagship the Miauzing and the Imperial ship the Tsarevich. The two ships looked remarkably alike up close, owing to the fact that their own ships were built to modified Imperial schematics. While the Kadite ship was powerful in its own right, it was an open secret that none of their craft could hold a candle to the Imperial vessels, mainly due to the jamming capabilities, which were such a staunchly guarded secret of the White Empire. The message was clear: they would work together, or die. The backing of their Imperial patrons was as much necessary for the war effort as the raw numbers provided by the Caddo forces. Neither could hope to beat the Shivit Colossus alone, and with the need for advanced technologies tightly binding the Catalandian Confederacy to Imperial will, they didn't have much choice in the matter. Besides, the Caddos had much desire to see the Shivits driven out of what was never their land in the first place as the Imperials did, considering the similar circumstances they had found themselves in. As we all know, the war was going rather well at the moment. Your forces are slowly grinding down the Shivits and are even advancing largely unimpeded in Siberia, said one of the doge officers. This is true. However, we cannot hope to sustain this rate of advance for long. Not only will we be far out from our supply lines, but we have still not landed the bulk of our forces, and must we remind ourselves that over 3/4 of our fighting forces comprise of those incompetent rounds? Retorted Perrin. Yes, the Empire is. We are prepared. We are prepared to drop the hammer when the time comes. But first, we need you to force the Shivits onto the Anvil. And I suppose you expect us to mount a direct attack on the Shivits. Not a direct attack, not per se, but rather a move which will force the Shivits back and allow for the establishment of a forward operations base. Preferably invest in Siberia. I will have to discuss with my sub-commanders. Let's hope this goes well for all our sakes. The results of the discussion were far from favorable. Perrin could ugly expect casualties in the millions if they tried to push against the Shivit wall. Fortunately, most of those losses would be easily replaceable around fanatics, and the Shiberian forefront had what was likely the weakest of the Shivit formations in play. Even still, it would be tough work, but it was necessary for Cade. So, yay, badly written political machinations. Those are always nice to have. This is somehow the best version of the book I have to date. It still manages to be fucking shit. Anyway, let's keep going. Nemchenkov, somewhere on the Siberian front. 4:07 p.m. The sun was already beginning to dip low in the sky. Nemchenkov pointed his rifle at a Caddo in the distance, lining up the glowing tritium dots in his sights with the Caddo silhouette. It looked like a clean shot. He depressed the trigger, feeling the rifle push back into his shoulder as it let out a sharp burst, crackling electricity arcing across the dusk sky. Nemchenkov, as part of the 99th Motor Rifle Division sent to hold out against the Caddo invasion, wasn't exactly a grizzled combat veteran, not by any standards. He, and most of the rest of his comrades, had in fact just been given a crash course on rifle drill and combat tactics, courtesy of the Caddos. The division had been on its way through Siberia for cold weather training, a lesson which the Caddo invasion had forced on them rather ahead of schedule. Suffering heavy casualties, the 99th had already begun taking its lessons to heart, and were somewhat effectively containing the Caddo attacks, at least in Nemchenkov's section of the front line. Caddo snipers were slowly picking away at the troops, playing a deadly game of cat and dog with their Shivit counterparts. Trails of plasma lit the snow as Shivit electro-laser bolts arced across the permafrost, wherever they had kept firing through the night, pounding away at some Caddo position that was hopefully in the right place. Huh? Dog puns? Hell, we have cat puns. Ooh. 5:25 p.m. Blemchenkov awoke with a joke. DMP 50 with a joke? What the fuck, Doge? Read properly. Blemchenkov awoke with a jolt. DMP 52 that he had been napping on had started moving. He jumped off, rolling to a stop in the snow below. The DMP stopped slightly ahead. He looked up, parachutes in the sky, greenish-grey forms outlined against the last of the sun's rays. Unnamed fire whizzing into the ground around the ship's troops as they opened fire. The DMP's gun slewed over, locking onto one of the paratroopers. Its quadruple cannons opened up, the chute falling limply from the skies, turned fire at another one. The thundering chainsaw rhythm of its gun sounded again. A hail of smoking shell casings raining onto the snow, cutting holes in melted snow. Did you really just use snow twice in one fucking sentence? Wow. Pro strats. But the handful of anti-air vehicles they had wasn't enough, not with the amount of cattles coming in. It wasn't long before they charged with the enemy's snipers. It's keeping, Doge. Type properly. Get your shit together, Doge. Fucking damage. Keeping most of the Doge's pinned. A wave of armored cars smashed into the cattle formations, taking advantage of their lack of armor and cutting them down with its machine gun fire. Peeking out from behind the now stationary DMP, Blemchenko fired a burst into the advancing enemy. Plasma trails lighting up the darkening sky as impromptu tracer fire. A volley of return fire dinged off the DMP's armored hull as he ducked back behind the vehicle, watching as the guns poured fire onto the enemy horde. But just as suddenly as the attack had begun, it stopped again, silence once again settling over the frozen landscape, broken only by sporadic gunfire. Cautiously looking out from behind the DMP, he found the area clear, even the enemy snipers having ceased fire. He climbed out from his covered position, climbing to the trench that had hastily been dug, helping retrieve the casualties that inevitably resulted from every skirmish. Brocchioni, officer's tent, somewhere on the Siberian front. 7:47 p.m. Siberia. Combat Scipion Brocchioni reclined as best as he could in the cold steel nut chair that had been provided to him. Which idiotic procurement officer had decided to issue uninsulated metal equipment for a cold weather environment? Nobody knew. What he did know, however, was that the constant cattle attacks were not good for his battalion. The most glorious Supreme Command of the Union had promised them reinforcements in a week. Not exactly much use to them at the moment. The Mayor had promised orbital artillery support. He probably promised them to them by the Polkovnik above, and the Kombrig above, and so on. Either way, he sent a distinct lack of large space-based objects blotting out the sun, and an even more distinct lack of laser fire descending from the heavens. Perhaps some other unit was getting their share of fire support. His most definitely wasn't. So, your historical tip of the day. Mayor here, it is in fact pronounced Mayor, like as in mayonnaise? It's actually the equivalent Russian language rank to major, and not in fact the local government of a city. Anyway, he could see the cattle in the distance, amassing, preparing for the next attack. Yet artillery fire wasn't doing much. They seemed to have established a ring of defense barriers to shoot down their shells, but the supposedly incompetent cattle who finding such technology was beyond him. Borchioni, Commandant, Siberian Front. 1:24 p.m. Borchioni watched as the car slowed to a stop before him, its sole occupant stepping out, snow crunching beneath their feet. He blinked twice, trying to confirm that what he saw before his eyes was real. He had always thought it to be a mere legend, a campfire story passed down through the ranks by veterans as they left service, but what stood before him was as real as the snow beneath his feet and the sky above. Awestruck, he hastily rose from his seat, throwing a salute as he did. Comrade Doshlenko, he asked as he stood at attention. Da, he said, returning his salute. The situation is not very good here, is it? Yet, the Kettles have been repelled for now, but without reinforcements we can hold for a day or two at best. There's Glencoe. He pondered the situation. Rather bleak, it seemed. Untold amounts of the enemy kept on pouring through the atmosphere, never-ending tide of reinforcements for the foe. This should have been stopped long before. The spacecraft orbiting above should have shot down these transports long before they ever touched the ground. But they didn't. That put him in a rather unenviable situation. Either outfight a foe exponentially larger, which happened to also be constantly getting reinforced, or deny this area to all of them. And while he would have preferred to refrain from using weapons of mass destruction on Soviet soil, it seemed he had no other choice. Reinforcements in any quantity wouldn't get here before the position was lost, and even if they did, he doubted their ability to hold against the unending tide. He placed a call, the signal routing to a receiver far away, read out a string of authorization codes. He doubted the enemy had been entrenched long enough to set up defenses against this. Today, the permafrost would burn in atomic fire. Unnamed officer, Shipyard Submarine Dorsarka, 31:31 p.m. The officer glanced nervously at the array of screens before them. The commander, the commissar, even the admiral of the entire Red Fleet had given their approval. The time was now. He turned his key. The doge beside him did the same. It was done. Authorization codes, coordinates, all had already been programmed into the system. All there was to do now was to wait. Strings of data pouring across the screens as the first stage boosters fired. Narrative. The missile rose from its depths in a cocoon of air, floating upwards until it popped from the water. The rocket motor went off, throwing plasma as it arced into space. Changing course as it reached the apex of its arc, skipping across the roof of the atmosphere before plummeting back to whence it came. It plunged back towards the ground, warhead splitting open, a rain of submunitions and decoys dropping on the ground below. The submunitions themselves corrected their flight, making their way to the target, MIRVs in their element. And they hurtled down to Earth, leaving a spread of mushroom clouds for all to see. And now it was clear, written in the earth, burned into the craters. A new age of warfare had begun, and the Union had just fired the first shot. And let's go with this. Let's stop here. Whoop whoop. Anyway, so that was our first, approximately. OBS is telling me it's only been 40 minutes. I don't think I accidentally cut out any large bits of audiobooking, but it's been an hour since I started recording, so. Honestly, I probably did. And if I missed any parts, blame Nick. It's his fucking fault. Download the book if you want to read anything I missed. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, yeah, that's that. Cheerio.